Fraud. You know what I'm talking about. Fraud. It's a bad thing, right? We're supposed to be against it. This is something that shouldn't even be a partisan issue. We should all be against fraud. Except apparently it's the new cool thing for Democrats. There's like a pattern of illicit behavior among very prominent Democrats that they are asking us to just overlook, pretend that somehow it's retribution. You remember the witch hunt where they went after President Trump a year ago, 2 years ago, whatever that was, where they literally made up charges. Remember the case in New York? It was a bunch of misdemeanors, bookkeeping charges that had well gone past the statute of limitations. But the prosecutors there in New York decided to be cute by half and create a bunch of them into a new charge, make it a fraud so they could charge him with it, and then ultimately tell the jury that you don't even have to decide on what charge you're going to get him, convict him on, as long as, you vote in the affirmative because we just need to get him. They went after him literally on a business bookkeeping expense and tried to send him to jail for it. Never mind that it was a fake felony and that the jury didn't need to decide on anything because it was in pursuit of getting Donald Trump, and that's all what mattered. But back to the Democrats. Like most things that Democrats do, if they're accusing us of it, then they're most likely doing it themselves. They love to talk all the time about the rule of law, democracy, following law.
No one is above the law.
Nobody's above the law.
No person is above the law.
No one is above the law.
Except for when they're caught. Then they call it retaliation. But this is different. See, in this particular case of fraud, our side has the receipts, actually the evidence, the depictions of all of it happening. Let me start with Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, and then I'll talk about New York Attorney General Letitia James and California Senator Adam Schiff, because they've all got something very similar in this case. It's all about fraud, mortgage fraud, and they're all guilty of it, of cheating the system. So let's start with this Fed Governor Lisa Cook that the president announced he was firing, removing her for cause. Federal Housing Director Bill Pulte put out online on social media on X the receipts, the actual possible mortgage fraud that she committed because she listed both her Atlanta and her Michigan properties as her primary resident. You can't have two primary residents. That's by definition not true. So why does she do it? Why did it happen? Well, she was renting out both of them, as it turns out. So actually, neither was actually her primary residence. But you have to understand why she did it and why the others did it. If you haven't applied for a home mortgage before, your primary residence qualifies for a lower interest rate. In fact, in many cases, you don't have to put down as much of a deposit. You can actually pay a lot less depending on the type of loan you get, but only for your primary residence. If it's an investment property, and in this case, this is what she was doing, if you're using it to rent it, you usually have to pay a much higher interest rate and put more money down, a larger down payment. So let's remember in the case of Lisa Cook, what her actual job is. Stop and think about this for a moment. She is a governor on the Federal Reserve, the nation's top bank, which is entirely responsible for setting mortgage interest rates. She knew exactly what she was doing to cheat the system. She knew that the law was very clear on what a primary residence was, and yet she lied about it. The evidence is clear. Director Bill Pulte put it out there for us all to see. She clearly checked the boxes about what her primary residence was. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick weighed in on the situation. Take a look.
But the issue is a federal government, a governor of the Federal Reserve, literally signs her name and commits mortgage fraud, right? It's alleged that she's committed mortgage fraud, and she says, I'm not going anywhere. Well, the crook always says, I'm not going anywhere. And why would anybody defend that? The real question should be, did she commit mortgage fraud, yes or no? And if you did commit mortgage fraud, please get out of the federal government, get out of the seat of the governor of the Federal Reserve, and go away. You don't deserve to be there if you've committed mortgage fraud. Right? It's black and white. If you've committed mortgage fraud, you should be a governor of the Federal Reserve.
Now, when it comes to New York Attorney General Letitia James, remember, she was the one going after Donald Trump, talking about the rule of law, going after him, making up charges about him. But she has something very similar to what Adam Schiff, the California senator, have, because they, in their situations, have two actual problems. Both of them have committed mortgage fraud. And in both cases, the evidence is out there for us all to see. But here's the additional problem that they both have. They're both elected to represent a state. So this is the funny thing about Tish James's fraud. She actually names her own father as her husband. This is where it gets twisted. But here's the funny thing. Remember, she is the New York Attorney General, but she has a house that she bought for rental purposes in Virginia that she listed as her primary residence. Just stop and think about that for a second. How can you be the New York Attorney General where you have to live in the state if you're claiming Virginia is your primary residence? Doesn't make sense. Adam Schiff actually takes that up a notch because he, by the Constitution, must claim California as his legal residence. This is a copy of his signature on the document where he says that Maryland is his principal residence. Why? Because he clearly wanted to buy a house in Maryland when he spent time in Washington, D.C. and have a lower interest rate. That's amazing. He lied. It's all out there. Schiff constitutionally must be a resident of California and claimed on the mortgage for his house that that was his primary residence. So beyond mortgage fraud, it clearly should have electoral consequences. Tish James is facing a lot of DOJ inquiry, and Ed Martin from the Department of Justice has listed it all out there because she has 3 homes. She had all of these charges leveled against her that Ed Martin is listing on there. He actually visited her home in New York to see if that was her, in fact, principal residence. So I want to remind you, the next time that you hear Democrats accuse anyone of anything, they are literally the actual frauds. Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.